Jai Prabhuji. Prabhuji chose to conclude this beautiful article about devotion with what Prabhuji himself calls one of the most beautiful devotional masterpieces. We said it is going to be yet another encounter with a devotional testimony. We've already met a few devotional testimonies in this article in Prabhuji's words, but this article will be ended with another being, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his devotional testimony, that in fact is the only text that Lord Chaitanya wrote, or that at least is attributed to him, that came from his lips. Not sure he wrote everything down as a one piece, but it is definitely an expression of his message and of words that he did say and share, and actions that he did share with others, and others were witnessing of, others that put his teachings in writings, but Lord Chaitanya himself did not write anything, in fact. In the Shri Shikshastakam, the 8 verses text, again, is a text that was consolidated as his only written contribution to humanity. We reflected in the previous class in the path of devotion that is still not an expression of the transcendental devotion, but includes more preliminary stages. Prabhuji talked with us about the topic of the gunas and about the devotion that can be tamastic devotion, can be rajasic devotion, can be sattvic devotion, which is a level when we still encounter challenges and effort in this path. We can also learn more about the stages of devotion that is not yet transcendental devotion in Prabhuji's Bhakti Yoga book. He describes all the stages that also have names in the terminology of the particular Bhakti Yoga path that originated from Lord Chaitanya, and that is described in Prabhuji's Bhakti Yoga book. We can find there a lot of references to this particular path. And after talking with us about the topic of the gunas, or the devotion in the level of the gunas, Prabhuji took us into the transcendental devotion that transcends this mundane level, that transcends the identification with a personality, into a state in which beings were in the actual romance with the divine. When the romance with the divine was not a path, was not any challenge, but it was effortless. It was already in expression. And this is the transcendental devotion. In this state, the love of God is not something that we try to cultivate, that we try to color our lives with, to develop in. But it's already the center of our lives, where beings are positioned, and everything else in their lives will be just a consequence, a result of this romance with the divine. So we, in our situation, our state, we can love our family, for example. Our family is very significant for us, and it is beautiful, and we love our family. And we give it important place in our lives, for sure. We love intimate friends. They are very precious to us, and we cherish the friendship and try to contribute in this friendship. We love our country. Some of us more, some of us less, but for many of us the country is very important. We try to be good citizens. We try to contribute and not to utilize, take advantage of the country, right? We love our pets in many cases, many of us, and try to protect them and reciprocate for the sweet love they show to us. And we love so many things. Our career, for many of us the career is very important. We try to evolve in it and develop a nice career and give ourselves in this career, etc. And we also love God, many of us, to this extent or another. Some of us give God a very central place in our lives and try that it will be integral part also of our family life and career, etc. But beings like Lord Chaitanya loved nothing but God. There was no list. They just loved God, that's it. Anything else was a consequence, was a result. This can give us an idea about what are we talking about. What is this transcendental love? It's not even only the center of their lives, but all their lives. It's this love of God. And this is, again, beings that were established in this transcendental devotion. That were, in fact, we can say, particularly in Lord Chaitanya's case, crazy about the divine. What kind of a goal is it for an individual to desire? Their innermost desire was to be an ant in a house of a devotee that is in the level of the gunas, not a transcendental devotee, that chants the name of the Lord, the names of the Lord repeatedly, so he can only hear it all the time. This is what Lord Chaitanya desired. This is what he expressed. And of course, this can also be interpreted in a symbolic way, but it also shows us the devotional heart and the craziness of this heart. They did not aspire for sanity, for being accepted, but to disappear in this love of God, because this is, again, was all their lives. And such beings like Lord Chaitanya, we also find in other languages, in other paths. The glorification of the divine doesn't have to be only in repeating the holy names of the Lord. This is one beautiful way that we see expression of it, not just in the case of Lord Chaitanya, but also in other religions. The enjoyment of the divine glorification, and particularly to chant the names of the Lord. But this glorification can also be expressed in the silence of the Buddha. This was also divine love story, without a question, and without a doubt, the center of his life was the divine. And anything else was a consequence, was a result. We find it in maybe Shankaracharya, for sure, that walked all over India. This was for sure divine glorification, that conducted debates to glorify his truth, the truth as he saw it. Again, this was all a consequence of this divine romance, love story. So all of these beings that Prabhuji once in a while give us this list, right? Lao Tse and Shankaracharya and Mahavira and Jesus and Moses, etc., that are luminaries for us, that we can aspire to such heights, for sure tapped into the state of transcendental devotion, which is the state when the love of the divine transcends the gunas. And again, today we are meeting the Shri Shikshastakam, which is the text that was spoken by Lord Chaitanya. And particularly the Bhakti Yoga path, not only in a general sense Bhakti Yoga, which means the love to the divine that colored Prabhuji's life always, and is expressed and manifest always in different ways, but even particularly the Bhakti Yoga path of Hinduism, and even more particularly the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is a very specific Vaishnava path, which means of devotees that love Vishnu, was significant in Prabhuji's own life journey, biography, and spiritual evolution, spiritual journey. In the beginning of Prabhuji's path, he came in touch with the devotees that belong to this lineage in Chile, in Puente Alto. And this impacted Prabhuji very, very much in the early stages of his, again, spiritual journey. Prabhuji met what we call, probably many of us, Hare Krishna devotees, individuals that belong to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. He met them in Chile. And their philosophy attracted him. And he used to visit the temple in Puente Alto and had a few very significant experiences, mystical experiences, in fact, that, again, impacted him deeply. And in his temple also is where he met Atulananda Acharya Maharaja, who later will be one of his two beloved gurus. Atulananda Acharya was then a temple president, and he guided Prabhuji and inspired Prabhuji a lot. Prabhuji, in his heart, already in a way saw him as his guru. He even, I think, shared with his father that Atulananda is my guru. But then he was not accepting even disciples. Then his guru was the guru of their mission. And later on, in Prabhuji's biography, this beautiful connection will consolidate into initiation, first initiation, Brahmana initiation, sannyas initiation, and till this day remains very dear to Prabhuji and sits on his altar and in his heart as one of his two gurus. Prabhuji has two gurus. One of them is, again, Bhakti Kavya Tulananda Swami Maharaja, who his first guru, that was an important guide for Prabhuji in the initial stages of his development. And the second guru of Prabhuji is Avaduta Shri, Brahmananda Babaji Maharaja, who helped Prabhuji, we can say, in the stage of the mastery of his path and even into the transcendental state, into the awakening. So he guided Prabhuji in a very elevated stage already of his journey. And these two individuals are very significant and, again, cherished by Prabhuji. Baba Brahmananda, who belonged to the Avaduta lineage, connected Prabhuji into the lineage of Avadutas and instructed him to continue this lineage. And of course, this day, as we witness Prabhuji's wide message, deep message, subtle message, abstract message, we can conclude that Prabhuji follows the footsteps of the Avaduta lineage and not of Hare Krishna devotee, although he, again, always cherished very much this path and even still has, of course, Krishna and Radha in his altar and in his heart. I think that the fact that Prabhuji chooses to conclude this article with a testimony of another individual, long testimony, significant. We didn't start soon. We're going to start delving into the Shri Shikshastakam and trying to understand why Prabhuji loves it so much and identifies so much with this text, which is, of course, evident by the fact that he simply chose to include it here. But in addition, I think that the fact that Prabhuji chooses not to conclude with his own words is an expression of Prabhuji's devotional heart that he cherished so much, and we can see it again evidenced so much in the retroprogressive variety of contents to give room and attention to the divine and to many, many, many great Mahatmas or great souls. We see that, again, the retroprogressive path, although it's very independent of any religious path, of any specific path, it's independent of, we can say, anything that is related to the world of names and forms. It is a free path. Prabhuji could speak it in so many different languages, and every time he can speak it again in yet another language. Still, even though includes in it so many beautiful path that we can all enjoy, and perhaps some of us will favor ones on top of others, perhaps others will enjoy the full variety, so we can enjoy in this retroprogressive message that in addition to being so powerful in its core essence, takes us into so many beautiful journeys. This is at least my personal experience, that we can continue to enjoy more and more and more in different ways, in different languages again. So we see that Prabhuji enjoys so much to give room to other great individuals, and even takes the time to contemplate on their particular mind, in their particular internal words and their thoughts, and reveal it to us. To my own humble opinion, Prabhuji not only mentions so many individuals that humanity already is very familiar with, and he yet reveals more facets, but also gives stage to individuals, and maybe we wouldn't know how great they were if Prabhuji wouldn't give them this stage. And this by itself is an evidence of a devotional heart, of devotion, of love. In love and devotion, as we see and we will hear soon in the words of Lord Chaitanya, the enjoyment comes not from glorification of the personality, the focus on this personality, but from glorification of the divine, from being insignificant. And we can, again, I think, see it very evidently in Prabhuji's path, teachings, books, and lectures. So we can understand, as we said, that the Shri Shikshastakam must be a good representation for Prabhuji, for a devotional path, because it includes here the entire Shri Shikshastakam. For sure, he identifies with whatever is expressed there, and we will try now to read these verses and identify the core principles, and try to humbly try to understand why Prabhuji includes here, what the Shri Shikshastakam tells us that is describing so rightly the transcendental devotion or the path of devotion. Prabhuji said again, this is one of the most beautiful devotional masterpieces. So let's see, let's learn also from the lips of Lord Chaitanya about this state of devotion, of the transcendental devotion. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. So in this first verse, this is considered the first verse of this 8 verses text, we see a particular glorification to the Sankirtana movement that I believe we can look at it in 2 ways. The first one is glorification of the specific Sankirtana movement that belongs to the what we mentioned earlier as the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, a particular lineage in Hinduism, particularly in the Bhakti Yoga path that originated in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, that naturally devotees of this path glorified their mission. Naturally, Lord Chaitanya glorifies this Sankirtana movement that encourages all of us to chant the names of God. Again, particularly in this space, it will be Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This was the mission of the Sankirtana movement. And this may be less relevant for you or for me to glorify this mission. And I believe that we can also look at it in a different way, which is more in a symbolic way, that it's to glorify all the devotional hearts and any heart that glorifies the divine and gives room to divine glorification and to the Sankirtana, which is to glorify the divine. Sankirtana means to chant the names of the Lord or to glorify the Lord in different ways. And as we mentioned, can be different ways to glorify the divine. So I think we can also take this verse as glorification again to the transcendental devotion. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enabled us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. I think we can see here a few points. One is the actual powerful activity of repeating names of God as they were given to us. We may not even understand how it is happening, but we can still tap and recognize this beauty and this power. Such as Lord Chaitanya tells us, there are hundreds and millions of names. You don't have to only say these particular names, but the divine was so kind with us that he gave us this channel and the ability to connect with him through repetition of his names. Lord Chaitanya mentions particularly Krishna and Govinda, and by many names perhaps he meant many names among the bhakti yoga path, particularly of Hinduism, and perhaps Lord Chaitanya here gives us a hint that the love of God doesn't have to be in a specific color, in a specific nation, in a specific way, in a specific anything that has to do with the word of names and forms. All of us can connect with the divine through the means that were given to us thanks to his kindness, whatever culture we are at. This can also be maybe the reference that we're receiving here from Lord Chaitanya. And in the end of this class, we're going to conclude with a little surprise that is some taste of Prabhuji's contemplation of the topic of symbolism, which is a very deep and profound and sophisticated topic that we are not going to break down here for sure, but we will give a little hint. We will read a little text from a recent book of Prabhuji that can give us better understanding of everything that we hear in the Shri Shikshastakam about the symbolism. So everything that we hear, we can take it in a very literal meaning or in a more symbolic manner, which is the direction that Prabhuji lead us and that the retroprogressive path lead us. So speaking about Lord Chaitanya, we can also imagine that he enjoyed particularly the names of Krishna and Govinda, and this of course is evident. He did chant the Maha Mantra repeatedly. He didn't chant other names of God. And at the same time, we can also witness the openness of his vision that could recognize that the love of God doesn't have to be particular to a specific nation. And what we see here, in addition to the powers of the repetition of the name of God that we can receive, is the kindness of the divine that Lord Chaitanya points to. That this immense, infinite, inexplicable power that will always be misunderstood, that we will never be able to understand, always greater than us, is so kind that he can come to us in a symbolic way, that again we will learn more in the end of this class from Prabhuji. And through the symbols, we can connect with this love, with this power. And the other beautiful point that we see in this section is the end of it. That Lord Chaitanya, the great devotee, transcendental devotee without a doubt, says, I am so unfortunate that I don't even have attraction for them. And here we see that a devotee, a devotional heart, will never recognize the personality, the body, as being great. He saw himself as inadequate devotee. He doesn't even have enough devotion. He recognized the beauty of the divine, that is so great, and he could not avoid seeing it. It was revealed to him. It was evident because he experienced transcendental love. But this didn't cause him to glorify himself, but only the divine. And this humility that we are probably can only dream of or aspire to in the level of Lord Chaitanya is light for us and clarifies the importance of the humility in our own path. And by humility, that we will meet more soon in further shlokas or verses of the Shri Shikshastakam, devotees do not refer to putting themselves down or to being insignificant. We hear in this space that the devotee wants to be lower than the blade of a grass. We don't want to be underestimated or disrespected as beings. But devotees disrespect their personality. They disrespect this body that is so fragile, that will die, can die any minute. Any achievement that we have as human beings, that we are so limited as human beings. But devotees recognize their greatness because the divine resides in them, and the divine is great. So the humility does not mean to put ourselves down, but it means to recognize our limitations as a personality. As personalities, and this includes all of us human beings. We will die, we can be sick, we are so fragile, we are prone to any word that another individual tells on us. It can shift all our world upside down. We're so limited. But once we recognize that this is temporary, that this is not who we really are, as Prabhuji tells us, this is just a name and a form that we currently identify with, we can recognize our greatness. So again, humility does not mean that we are less in any way, and yet it is very important because we often can get into the mistake or the trap of attributing to this personality abilities that we have thanks to divine glory, thanks to the romance with the divine. Perhaps we are more qualified, we are more able, but this is because of the divine. It's not because of our own abilities. So this is an approach of a devotee that we see here in this Shri Shikshastakam, and in general in this path of devotion, and in general in devotion. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So now we hear more explicitly, clearly about the importance of developing this humility, developing this state of mind that is not easy to develop. To really be humble, we can pretend to be humble, but to really be humble, it takes time. Similarly to devotion, can take time to develop this elevated state of humility. And Lord Chaitanya tells us, in order to be able to chant the names of God, of the divine, we need to have a humble heart, and we should develop this state of mind. We should see ourselves as lower than others. We should respect others. Again, not because we think that we are less, but because currently we can recognize that we are very arrogant. Our natural state as egos is to think that we are very important and that we are, in a way, we are the center of the world. And a devotee shifts from the awareness from being the center of the world and the controller of the world, right? We think that we can fix our life and we can change everyone else and we can find all the solutions and we know what to do and how to do, etc. This is the position of us as egos. And we also think that we are the center. We should be enjoyed. If we suffer, this is the most important occurrence that currently happens in this universe. We are shifting this consciousness to understand that we are not so important, that there are more individuals here, that there is even some divinity that is more important than us, that we just died not so long ago and soon we are going, we were born not so long ago and soon we are going to die, that we are full of imperfections. This is why we struggle. And this shift in consciousness, this is what will free us of the suffering. This arrogance causes us suffering, that we feel that we are so important. So the recommendation of this path, and particularly here, the words of Lord Chaitanya, to see ourselves not so significant, to see ourselves less than others, to respect others, because currently our view is just the opposite. Once we start to give not a lot of respect, minimal attention even, we can recognize that really we have some impurities to work on. We have some things that we may be not so considerate with others because we are attributing to ourselves so much importance. And this path recommends us to shift this consciousness, this attention, to change the state of mind that allows us also to study more about our own suffering that we cause to ourselves because of a false approach, a false identification, which is identification with this body-mind complex, and an attitude that is problematic, that is egoistic, that causes suffering to us and to others. Once we develop more devotion in our life and more recognition of the fact that this personality is not so important and is even not us, as Prabhuji tells us, we can relieve more of our suffering and also be more ready for this divine love story, the relationship with the divine. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So this is for sure a continuation of this humble state of mind that has no desires. Lord Chaitanya did not want to be the great Lord Chaitanya that he is. He did not even want women. He did not even want money. He did not want fame. He did not write books. He did not aspire to attract followers. Everything that we received from him was a consequence of his desire to only love the divine, birth after birth. Lord Chaitanya doesn't even want enlightenment. He is willing to be born again and again and continue to enjoy this love story with the divine, because he is not so important. This personality is not so important, and the glorification of the divine is similar to enlightenment, as we spoke in the previous class, I believe. So we see here the importance of the state of humility, of humbleness, and the obstacles, the desires can cause in our retroprogressive path. When you have a lot of desires to accumulate, to be, to succeed, to achieve, to etc., this cannot allow us to love the divine. And we see in Lord Chaitanya's word that he has no desires. And this is the state we want to be in order, again, to advance in this divine love story or in our particular journey, a retroprogressive journey. A lot of desires, as we said, cause us more and more rajas. They are expression of rajas, and they will cause us more and more rajas. So we can also take this shloka and as a tool to recognize the problem of the desires and the benefit of minimizing a little bit our mundane desires. O son of Maharaja Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So before Lord Chaitanya tells us that he is willing to be born again and again, if he enjoys this transcendental love with the divine, which shows us that when he was in this love story, he did not feel this birth, it didn't burden him, and yet here we hear that Lord Chaitanya says, I am not belonging here even. I don't know how I was born here. I belong to you. Please put me at your lotus feet. And what we hear here in Lord Chaitanya's word is the recognition that he is in fact already a devotee of Krishna. And this also can guide all of us. We hear this message in the Bhakti Yoga path of the Sankirtana movement in relation to each and every one of us, that tells us that we are in fact not this body, not this identification, not this name, not our profession. We are not the son or daughter of our particular family, but we are servants of the divine. We have fallen into this position somehow, but this is not our home. And this fact we can find in different languages, not only in Bhakti Yoga language, we even find it in Buddhism. We are this body and mind situation that we are at is one of our causes of suffering. It's not who we are. So we hear this truth that this is not our real position in many, many, many different languages and ways, and we hear it in abundance in the retroprogressive path. And this is another expression of this fact that we hear in the words of Lord Chaitanya that tell us that a devotee in a transcendental state knows that this is not who he is. And this can teach all of us to take inspiration and recognize that this is not really who we are. We are, again, this temporary appearance of us on this planet is so short. It's full of difficulties. It's full of imperfection. And no matter how successful we will be, it will be full of imperfections because we are human beings. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. So we're getting closer to the end of this beautiful, beautiful devotional testimony. And now we hear about another important component of this devotional path, which is the separation. In the path of duality, when there are two, there will always be the separation. Even in mundane love, we know we cannot constantly be with our beloved. And even Lord Chaitanya, the greatest devotee, tells us, even in this ecstatic state, transcendental level, there will be probably some experience of separation. I say probably because I think this is what we hear in his words, that God is less present. What to speak about us? For sure, we sometimes feel more God with us and sometimes a little less. Even Lord Chaitanya tells us about this fact. And yet, what he beautifully reveals here is that the separation is not a real separation. Because even in this separation, all the focus, all the attention is on the love, is on the divine. So on one hand, Lord Chaitanya tells us this is so difficult. Moment can be like 12 years. To feel your absence, it's like to die. It's so difficult. And at the same time, he never leaves the divine. He constantly aspires for the reunion, waits for the reunion. He doesn't have anything else to complete himself when he feels this absence. He enjoys in this absence. He cherishes this absence. And this separation is an important aspect that we learn about also in the path of devotion. I remember personally that I came in touch with the letter that Uddhava brought to the gopis. So Uddhava was a good friend of Krishna, and the gopis, we have mentioned them already, were the beloved devotees of Krishna who were crazy in love for Krishna, and they were in this difficult separation because Krishna left them to Dvaraka, and they became mad and crazy and devastated, but they never forgot Krishna and they never loved anything else but God, but Krishna. And then Uddhava came to them with a letter when they were in this difficult state of separation. And I have no memory of what was my particular situation. I don't think I was too devastated, but when I read this letter in the first time, it was many years ago, I understood something also about the relationship with the Master. As we said, we can find a lot of parallel aspects in the love to the Master and the love to the divine, because the Master is the representation of the divine in our lives. So we expect something similar in this relationship, and we find similarities without a doubt. It's the same relationship in essence. The Master expedites it and manifests it, but it is our relationship with the divine. And I remember that when I read this letter, which we are not going to read, I will just give the what I think is the bottom line, or for me at least, is that Uddhava reminded the gopis in this letter that he brought from Krishna that in fact, in their agony, in their frustration, in their madness, helplessness, difficult state, they are all the time with Krishna because they keep on longing for him. They have no replacement for this love to Krishna. And this is why they never were separated from Krishna. And this is where the union, in fact, exists in the separation. And I think we see the same point in the words of Lord Chaitanya here, that the separation from the divine is unbearable. And yet a devotee is never separated from the divine. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. And Lord Chaitanya concludes with these devotional words that tell us, I think in 2 words, I accept. maybe the hardest in this devotional path. Anything and everything I accept. And as a devotee, I understand, Lord Chaitanya tells us, and I'm aware of it, that He is the Lord. He is a decision maker, and He is free. I might not understand. I might, for sure, many cases, will not love, will not prefer. This can even include that He will leave me, and I will feel the absence. But I understand that He is superior than me, and He is, again, the decisions maker. So He can do anything and everything. I still love Him, and I will never favor any other path, because my devotion to Him is greater than any other compromise. And a devotee accepts whatever happens. And many great transcendental devotees encountered a lot of difficulties and challenges. And they did not give up this state of love and devotion, even when they didn't always understand. They still understood that the decision is greater than their ability to make decisions as human beings, and to understand as human beings why things happen the way they do. And for us, devotees on the path, of course, it's a great light and guidance to understand that even if we don't always understand, it doesn't mean that the problem is in the path, or that God leaves us, or doesn't love us anymore. And we may not understand, but we will understand sooner or later that everything is for our benefit, that our paths were perfectly designed for us by the divine, because all of us have this relationship with the divine. And the recommendation, as I see it from beings like Lord Chaitanya, like Prabhuji, and many others, the recommendation is to listen to this divine romance and follow it. It doesn't mean in what way, or what path, or what names to repeat, or what actions to do, etc. As we said it so many times in this course. But it means to be obedient to our own hearts, to our own choices, to our own discrimination. Every moment, this moment, every moment, to be loyal to ourselves and not to other voices that can come either from our own mind or from the world outside that is so powerful and that is so convincing. And this means necessarily also to accept when we don't understand the full picture, because this must be part of our path. The path to more and more elevated devotion cannot be when everything satisfies us and it's clear to us and working according to our plan, and we can explain to others and understand. Sometimes we will feel so much less. But if we keep on hanging on to this path and to our knowing in a way that we met in the beginning of the path, that this is true, that we really can grow this devotion and develop it and let it manifest and continue forward, sooner or later the pieces will complete the picture. Everything will fall into place. But for this we need to develop more and more this acceptance that we hear in the words of Lord Chaitanya here, and also we heard it a lot from Prabhuji, and we went deep into this aspect of the acceptance that is so important in the retroprogressive path as I understand it. And we will end this class with a little surprise. We like to end our classes with some words of Prabhuji that always take us to the place from where they come and use it as a meditation. But today we are going to surprise with another challenge. And we will get a taste from Prabhuji's words from one of his recent books. As we said, Prabhuji had a long journey, and the initial stages of his journey were different than naturally when he developed further and elevated into the mastery and into awakening and enlightenment. And similarly, or in the same way, also the way Prabhuji teaches us manifests different stages. There is a stage when Prabhuji was more open to the public and shared with us in a way that it was more easy for us to grasp and understand. The book that we study in this course, Experimenting with the Truth, is one of these books that is not difficult to understand intellectually. It's very friendly. It's very communicative. It might not be easy to do the jump that Prabhuji did and follow his footsteps. This will always be probably not an easy achievement, as we see evident in the world, and how many individuals really were managed to tap into the transcendental devotion or the transcendental state. But the language was our language. We could understand, we could relate to it, we can relate to it, we can speak about it, we can understand what Prabhuji tells us. At the later stages of Prabhuji's teachings, when after his retirement, when he no longer speaks to the public and no longer accepts new disciples, as we said, he only works with a group of disciples who didn't agree to leave him, and so he was obligated to continue and give what he could, which is a lot. But he does not accept new disciples and does not aspire to convince, to help, to teach, to make himself understood. But he more, I think, in my own humble understanding, writes between him and himself. And in this stage, Prabhuji reveals so much that always existed in him, but we close disciples never knew. It was a shock to us even that Prabhuji had all this width and breadth, particularly in Western philosophy and in general, and in many more places. In fact, not just in Western philosophy, but Western philosophy was a big one for all of us. That although we knew, Prabhuji is very well versed, because we can hear the hints regarding Western philosophy even in Experimenting with the Truth. There were a few points that we could understand that Prabhuji is referring to particular philosophers, but we didn't imagine how established he is, and he was all the time, in this knowledge and wisdom of Western philosophy. And in the recent years, when Prabhuji more writes, as we said, more to himself and shares everything, all this fountain is exposed, and luckily we as humanity can also come in touch with this. And today we are going to get our first taste in this course. Perhaps we will have a few more, I'm not sure as of yet, but this is for sure the first one, which is a part from Prabhuji's book that is called The Symbolic Turn. Sophisticated and, again, I think not easy book that requires effort to delve into and grasp and understand, and also knowledge in Western philosophy will be helpful probably as well in order to understand this book. But we are getting just a small part when Prabhuji talks about what is symbol. And the reason we are bringing it here is because I feel it is going to give us a lot of clarification and order and understanding regarding Prabhuji's relationship with this wisdom of Lord Chaitanya, of the Bhakti Yoga path. of the Mantra, etc. That, as we said, Prabhuji cherished this space a lot, and it's in his heart forever, and it's in his altar. And yet, Prabhuji's approach to it is way broader than limiting himself to only chant the Mantra and finding all the answers in chanting the Mantra, because evidently Prabhuji is exposed to the fact that the Mantra is a symbol, but it's not the entire truth. So we're taking this challenge. We will read a short part when Prabhuji explains to us what is symbolism, and then we'll read a part when Prabhuji talks particularly about Lord Chaitanya in the Symbolic Turn book, and reveals to us that it is paradoxical that teachings that came from a being such as Lord Chaitanya, that were so subtle, so abstract, for sure symbolic. Lord Chaitanya rejected all the rules and regulations and said, only chant, only dance, and repeat the names of God. You need nothing else. He didn't have any difficulty in intellectual abilities. He was very brilliant personality, and yet this was his conclusion. For sure, such a being does not recommend us to be limited to a particular dogma and a particular religion. And Prabhuji reveals to us here that it's paradoxical that this being was a source for yet another religion. But, as we have already mentioned, and Prabhuji will mention here also in these words, this phenomenon, paradoxical phenomenon, happened time and again in the history of religions and of spiritual journeys. We see the individual that shines as an individual, as individuality, and following this individual, we, humanity, established rules and regulations. We try to hang on to this wisdom, to this beauty, to this divine romance, and put it in word, and possibly even by this, as humanity, could cause harm to one another rather than advocate the essence, which is love of God. So let's read Prabhuji's words. I believe that the transition will be evident for us, that this text is less speaking to us and attracting us and pulling us into meditation. We might need to pause and think more. But this is another important aspect of Prabhuji, and the requirement for intellectual clarity will help us to understand Prabhuji better. So we'll take this challenge to listen carefully to Prabhuji's words, understand what he tells us here, and in this we will conclude this beautiful topic of the Shri Shikshastakam, with which Prabhuji ends his beautiful article about devotion and the chapter. This is how we will end this chapter of devotion. Thank you for joining me in this endeavor and allowing me to try and express what I managed to possibly grasp. I hope I was of some benefit to you. And our next chapter in this course is going to take us into a completely different language, completely different surroundings, which is Buddhism. Jai Prabhuji. So we're starting by hearing from Prabhuji what is a symbol. A symbol is not a mere image, but an audible image. Since we can only understand what we see if we listen carefully to its narrative. It is a dual entity that through the sensible reveals the supersensible, thanks to an audible narrative that connects the physical with the metaphysical. And now we hear another part of this book, a conclusion of chapter 19, when Prabhuji speaks about Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is considered an incarnation or avatar of Lord Krishna. Undoubtedly, a symbolic entity who distributes divine love in and through the human. As we have seen, the figure of Jesus and that of Sri Chaitanya have met similar fates. His own followers have tried to propagate the original voice of the Master through generations. In both contexts, the proselytizing impetus has led to a paradoxical evolution. The gradual conceptualization and at the same time desymbolization of its teachings. Followers of later generations, especially in the tradition that emerged from the second case, driven by the desire to propagate their beliefs in every town and village, were compelled to forge a detailed theology. It is ironic that a tradition initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who rejected conceptual structures in favor of immersion in the sound symbol of the Maha Mantra, should ultimately culminate in a return to its original form as a conceptually structured theology. The cycle of return to conceptual principles after a period of symbolic emphasis reflects an intricate dynamic in the evolution of institutionalized religiosity. Jai Prabhuji.